We now have on the line the Minister for Transport, the MP for Pakuranga, National MP for Pakuranga, Simeon Brown, to talk about an issue you guys raised a couple of weeks ago, and I knew it was big because of the sheer volume of calls and texts we got on this issue of resits for your practical driver's test. The government decided, for whatever reason, to take off the fee, and that has caused huge demand and massive month and month. I think one person said a year waiting list in the area they were in. So what's going on? The Minister joins us now. Welcome to the platform again, Simeon. First, can we just go back a little bit? Why was the decision made not to charge for the resits?
Well, the decision was made by the last government to remove the fee for resits based on the idea of equity, effectively, that we want to encourage and support people to be able to get their licence. We don't want money to be a barrier. And there is some logic to that, in that, if young people don't get licences, they struggle to get jobs. If they do travel to work and they aren't licensed, then this is a pathway through into the criminal justice system. And so there is a logic to that, and a licence is a very powerful tool for a young person to be able to get a job.
Right.
So that's the starting point, and I think there is some logic to that argument. The issue, though, is that what we've seen is, of course, when you remove a fee for resits, you effectively mean that you change the incentives around actually...
Economics 101, reduce the price, increase the demand, and if there's no price, there's endless demand.
So what we've seen is an explosion in demand, and it's been driven by two things. One has been people basically not preparing as much as they should be for their tests, just using their tests more as a driving instruction lesson.
Yep.
And so we've seen the actual pass rate drop quite significantly.
Yep.
The second is that at the same time, there's been, because there's been a significant number of people with visas who've been in the country for 12 months, now needing to get their overseas licence converted to a New Zealand licence and having to do their tests. And so both of those... Was there a surge in
immigration 12 months ago or something?
12 months prior was effectively when sort of the borders were reopened in 2022, and then 12 months through to 2023, as we've seen those numbers of migrants come into the country, they're needing to get their licences 12 months after they enter the country. And so that has also been significantly increasing the demand for driver licence tests. So those two things converged about effectively at the same time, and so you've seen the wait time go from about 7 to 10 days up to 60 days.
We heard stories. We had people, genuine people ringing up saying they were flying to other areas or other districts where there wasn't a bloody waiting list. I mean, it's just crazy.
That's right. That's exactly right. And so there's two things we're doing. One is and it takes time, unfortunately, to do things, but we're obviously having to look at the policy, which is the policy of free resits, and we're working that through at the moment. The second is encouraging the New Zealand Transport Agency and its contracted parties to look at every single thing they can do in order to provide more capacity or to limit demand. And so one of those things in particular is learner's license, where people were doing multiple tests each day. Now there's a 10-day sit down. You can't do your second test straight away. You've got to wait 10 days before you can do it. And then in the practical driving test space, they're getting more driving instructors trained as quickly as they can, getting them into...
Who provides that service? Is that contracted into...
It's contracted to the likes of VTNZ, and those training providers, so they're contracted to the agency. One of the challenges is that, from what I understand, whilst they've got KPIs, they're I think under their contractual arrangements, they're meant to ensure that the wait time is no longer than 30 days. But I don't believe the contractual arrangements actually allow for penalties to be applied if that's not being met. And so the agency is working with them as much as can be done in difficult circumstances. We've also, I've asked the agency to look at whether driving instructors can be quickly trained to then become test.
Driving testers, okay, yep.
So there's more work that needs to be done there. And so there's lots of things that need to be done. I think it's about 10 actions that the agency is working with them to try and see what can be done without a policy change. Yeah. But we're also working on that policy change as well.
Yeah. To be brutally frank, Minister, you could have seen this coming.
Oh, absolutely.
And the bureaucrats should have seen this coming, and we should never have gotten this situation. It's incompetence.
Yes, I mean, it was a bad policy decision, ultimately.
When did you find out about the problem?
Well, the numbers were starting to go up before Christmas, and then they peaked I think they started peaking in January, and they've been consistently high since then.
So is there anywhere in the country worst affected?
It bounces around. It's pretty consistent across the country. I get the numbers every week in my weekly reports, and it bounces around between sort of 50 days and 60 days. As I said, it's unacceptable, and there's a lot of.
And when were you told? When did the officials finally realise the problem this policy is called, or did you not, as Julianne Gender would say, read the report?
Well, I read the report, and I criticised the policy when I was in opposition, and because I could see that this was going to be one of the problems.
I'd say one of the real problems here is that, and I got to say, it was one of the most amazing responses when someone rang in and raised this a couple of weeks ago, just the universal dismay. The problem is that we may have young people who, in particular, in desperation, who drive unlicensed.
Well, this is the balance, right? In terms of we've got an issue in terms of the